Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, as you all know, the Supreme Court is poised to overturn Roe v. Wade. That is a decision that was reached back in the early 70s, legalizing abortions in the United States. Now, the reason why this has been exposed is because a draft opinion was leaked to the public. So a lot of people have been talking about this issue. You have protests that are taking place at the U.S. Supreme Court around this issue. And I want to just take some time to share my thoughts about this very complex issue. This is a complicated issue. There are many dimensions to it. And anyone who, comes up with a quick answer or quick opinion about this particular issue is someone who hasn't really given it serious thought, because there are complicated issues involved in this issue. The first question is about the meaning of life. What is considered human life? Some people take the position that a fetus is not human life, and they think that it can be discarded because it's not a fully developed human being. And, this is my position. First of all, I do believe that fetuses are human life. Abortions are the destruction of human life without a doubt. I'm sure that many of you have seen those graphic images of aborted fetuses, and you've seen the actual limbs of these fetuses ripped apart, sucked out of a woman's body like like it was just any old material and stuff like that. And I've seen those grotesque images of these aborted fetuses. And without a doubt, those are human lives. And we all know this. I think that by raising those particular arguments, people are trying to divorce their logical mind from the reality of what is being done when people have abortions. You are literally sucking the life out of a woman and tearing apart a human fetus. That is the destruction of human life. And many women who have abortions years later, they think about what they did. They think about that particular decision, and it does weigh heavy on many women's consciences. So it is, in fact, human life. There's no way around it. There's no way around the fact that human life is being destroyed. Anytime you can see little hands and little feet and faces and all that kind of stuff ripped apart and all that kind of stuff, that is a human life. And when I think about this kind of stuff, I just think like this. One question comes to mind, and that is, you hear a lot of people talking about Black Lives Matter, people saying, using that as a rallying cry around the issue of police brutality and all that kind of stuff, and rightfully so. But when I think about that slogan in the general sense, not dealing with the issue of police brutality, just in general, it makes me wonder, do Black lives matter when they're in the womb? Do they matter at that point? Apparently, to a lot of us, they don't matter at that point. Those lives can be easily discarded. Like, we live in a disposable society, an instant gratification society where people are not held accountable at all for their decisions. And they feel like they can discard human life, like they discard their trash that they throw out, or like they discard toilet paper after they have used it and they flush it down the toilet. That's how people treat human life. So, for me, this is a very complicated issue. Like, when I hear about it, I'm not like one of these people that are enthusiastically in favor of abortion rights or out here marching for a woman's right to choose and all that kind of stuff, because I do realize that at the end of the day, it is in fact the destruction of human life. And it just seems like we have tried to blot that aspect out of our minds and just view this as a issue of a woman's right to choose. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The other thing is this, even though that is the case, but before I go into that, part of me just wonders, how is it that, religious people, for instance, church leaders and stuff like that can rally behind pro-abortion type of issues? How can they rally behind the destruction of human life? As a religious person, I'm not talking about what is politically correct and all that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about just as a religious person who's been taught to value human life, that's been taught about how precious human life is. And this is across, the major religions, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. All of those religions talk about the value of human life and just how precious it is. So I don't understand why these religious people would be out here marching in support of abortion, marching in the support of the destruction of human life. And the same can be said about other things same-sex marriage and all that kind of stuff, which is very, that's a whole controversial issue, which I'm not going to go into right now. But the same can be said about that. It's what has happened is, these religious leaders have basically traded their religious principles for political expediency, for what's politically convenient and what's politically correct. And that's not the role of a religious institution. That's not the position that a religious person is supposed to take. And that brings me to, this issue of the actual decision and what I think about it. Obviously, I value human life. I do not champion the destruction of human life. I'm not a fan of abortion or, out here rallying for a woman's quote unquote right to choose and all that kind of stuff. But I do realize that we don't live in a theocracy. We live, at least on paper, in a democracy, in a secular society that has a separation between church and state. And the role of the state is not to impose any kind of religion or to impose or try to establish any religion. The role of the society, the secular government society, is to protect the rights of people, to allow people to have individual freedoms and to make their own decisions, whether right or wrong. So it's not up to, religious people to dictate the morality for the rest of society. That is an individual decision that people have to make. So from that perspective, I understand why, a secular society should give people to make moral decisions on their own instead of imposing morality on people and imposing their particular views on others. Ultimately, people make moral choices for themselves instead of the government making those choices for them. For instance, in this society, people can drink, people can go to, do all kinds of immoral things, but they're not illegal. People can commit adultery, people can do all kinds of things in this society, but it's not the place of society to pass laws restricting people in ways that inhibit or block their right to make choices or to have certain freedoms and stuff. Um, so yeah, even though I do believe that abortion is immoral, I do believe that it is the destruction of human life. At the same time, I recognize that individuals have to make their own moral decisions instead of the state making those decisions for them. So, that's what I think about that. It's ultimately up to the individual to make the decision whether or not to get an abortion. And also, with respect to abortions, like, there are multiple situations that, where someone may have to get one. Like there are health issues, like for instance, a situation where there's a threat to the mother's life if she gives birth to a child. There are situations where the child may be born with certain types of defects and all that kind of stuff that are known ahead of time that would make that child's life difficult and make the parents' life difficult. There are situations where women are impregnated, as a result of rape or incest and stuff like that. So there are situations where it's understandable why somebody would decide to get an abortion. And, I don't think that abortion should be used as a substitute for birth control, but, there are situations where women, in some cases, actually use it as substitute birth control. But I think that that's, I think that that's wrong and that women shouldn't do that. But ultimately, it's up to that woman to decide what she wants to do with her body. She will bear the moral consequences of her action. But she should be entitled to make those moral decisions, just as people have the right to make moral decisions about whether they want to drink alcohol or even in today's society, whether they want to smoke, marijuana or, go to a strip club or do other, gamble and all these other things that are considered more immoral. They still have the right to make those kind of decisions and bear the consequences for those decisions in a free, secular society. So, that's what I think about this situation. Again, it's like I'm really torn in this situation, but I recognize that we live in a society where this has been legal for all these years. And even if abortions are rendered illegal by the courts or by certain states, women are going to continue to get abortions regardless. They're just going to be more risky. Their lives are going to be more in jeopardy if, abortion is illegal around the country. And also you have to look at, the disparities in terms of lack of certain resources. Like for instance, if abortions are illegal in a certain state, just the expenses that are involved with poor women, for instance, trying to get abortions, having to incur expenses to travel, it's going to have a harder burden on poor women and on Black and other so-called minority women more so than other groups of women. And then we also have to ask ourselves, do we really want people to bring children in the world that they don't want to bring into the world, that they have no love for, and they have no desire to take care of them and all that kind of stuff? So those are some of the questions. So I know that this video is all over the place, and that speaks to like how I am really torn about this issue. But overall, I do believe that women ultimately should have the right to make their own decisions when it comes to this. But that doesn't mean that I think that it's morally correct for a woman to abort human life, to abort her child and all that kind of stuff. But it's just like not the proper place for a man to be telling a woman what to do with her body, since it's the woman that has to bear that child for 9 months. It's the mother that actually has to give birth to the child and all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, it should be up to the mother whether or not she decides to go to term with her pregnancy. And, you know, I know that there are some issues with respect to a man and his role in whether or not a woman decides to have an abortion. And I may respond to that in another video. But tell me what you all think about this issue. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, and hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings. Have a great day.